It began with silence, the kind of silence that only follows extinction. Across the stars, worlds that once burned bright were reduced to cold ashes. The Tvar Dominion called it purification. They believed themselves the apex predators of the galaxy, chosen by evolution itself to cleanse the weak and rule over the worthy. For millennia, they hunted every intelligent species they encountered, consuming civilizations as easily as they consumed resources. They called it the Great Culling. Planets screamed into the void, and the void never screamed back. Until, one day, the hunters stumbled upon a signal they couldn't trace. It wasn't a distress call, or a military broadcast, or a plea for mercy. It was something else. A simple pulse, repeating every 21 seconds. Unknown origin. Unknown pattern. The Dominion's war masters listened for weeks, trying to decode it, until one of their xenologists realized the truth. It was a heartbeat. And it was getting louder. At first, the Council of Predation dismissed it. Some small race hiding in the dark. Perhaps another dying world preparing its final stand. They sent a reconnaissance fleet to investigate the outer spiral arm, where the signal originated, a minor blue planet orbiting a yellow star. They thought it would be simple. Quick! One more culling before the next campaign. They didn't know what Earth meant. The fleet that arrived found no interstellar defenses, no planetary shields, no fleets in orbit. Only silence, and a planet wrapped in clouds. Their commanders laughed. Another weak species, hiding behind atmosphere and oceans. They deployed atmospheric probes. But before the first probe reached the lower thermosphere, it was vaporized by an invisible beam. A second probe followed, equipped with stealth cloaking and layered shielding. It lasted 3 seconds longer. Then, from the planet's dark side, a whisper emerged across their comms. A voice, calm, measured, impossibly human. You should have stayed in your part of the sky. And then, the stars blinked out. The Dominion shipmasters screamed as their navigation arrays went blind. Space folded around them, twisted like metal under heat, and the fleet's formation broke apart. When their systems came back online, the blue planet was gone. In its place hung a massive object, black, angular, reflecting no light. It wasn't a ship. It was something older. Something vast. The Dominion's flagship, the Hunger of Worlds, sent a message to the nearest relay. Contact lost. Engaging anomaly. The message never arrived. The only record recovered centuries later was a single visual fragment. A shape, barely visible, crossing the dark between stars. A vessel with human insignia. The data tag read, Earthwatch. After that day, the Tvar stopped laughing. They sent 3 more fleets, each larger than the last. None returned. Whole sectors began to vanish. Outposts went silent. Then, one day, a derelict Tvar warship drifted into known space. Its hull was intact. Its crew, however, had been removed. Every corridor, every chamber empty, except for a single phrase scorched into the metal walls. We remember what you did! When the Dominion finally assembled a grand armada, over 1,000 ships, they entered soul space prepared to obliterate the source of their terror. What they found instead was nothing. No planet, no humans, no orbiting satellites. Just a field of debris, scattered like ancient bones. And then, a whisper again, across every calm, every frequency, every thought and. You came hunting. Now be hunted. The first human warship revealed itself, like a ghost tearing through the fabric of reality. It didn't appear, it arrived. Its hull bore scars from 1,000 battles, some against things no Dominion sensor could name. Its name was simple. One word etched across its flank, retribution. The Dominion opened fire. Beams, plasma, kinetic lances, everything they had. The retribution didn't move. Didn't evade. It absorbed. The shot simply disappeared. And then, a second later, The Dominion's own fleet began to crumble from the inside, systems melting, metal turning to ash, space itself burning in silence. There were no explosions, just sudden nothingness. Ships turned to dust in midair. Entire wings of destroyers ceased to exist. And in the center of it all, the Retribution moved forward at a pace so slow it felt deliberate, like a predator toying with its prey. Across the stars, the story spread like infection. The hunters were being hunted. The Tvar tried to deny it, but fear has a scent, and soon, every race in the galaxy could smell it. They began scanning for the faint human pulse signal, that haunting, rhythmic heartbeat. When they found it, they fled. Those who didn't joined the silence. In the ruins of the Dominion capital, 3 months later, a surviving officer crawled through the wreckage, recording one final log. His voice trembled. "We thought the humans were prey. They are not. They are something older. Something that waits." His transmission was intercepted by an unknown signal, human in structure, emotionless in tone. "Transmission acknowledged. Hunt complete." The Dominion never recovered. But that was just the beginning. Because far beyond the rim, in the silent dark between galaxies, other hunters were watching, and the humans were already moving toward them. In the archives of the Koru Ascendancy, there was a record no one dared open. Its seal bore a single word from an extinct tongue: humanity. For centuries, the Koru had ruled the stars with quiet arrogance, untouched by the wars of others. They had heard whispers of the Dominion's downfall, of fleets vanishing, and worlds gone dark, but such tales were always dismissed as myth. Until one day, a sensor array at the edge of their territory captured something impossible. An object the size of a city, moving through hyperspace without a drive signature. The Ascendancy's Grand Marshal ordered long-range scans. No readings returned. Only a pulse, slow, steady, human. The council assembled in their crystalline chamber, light refracting through 1,000 prisms, faces warped by fear. "Are we under attack?" someone asked. "No," replied the marshal. "We are being hunted." Across the galaxy, evidence began to surface. Frozen wrecks of Tvar ships adrift in interstellar dark, their hulls etched with strange symmetrical marks, as though carved by something both mechanical and alive. Entire crews missing, their data cores wiped except for one message, an ancient Earth phrase translated by scholars. "Predator becomes prey." The Koru debated intervention, forming alliances with races that once despised each other. But trust among hunters is fragile, and whispers grew. What if the humans weren't Avengers at all, but something worse? What if they had changed? In hidden observatories, alien scientists replayed the old Dominion distress call, slowing the audio until the pulse behind the static became audible. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of a heart, mechanical yet alive. When a patrol fleet finally encountered the source, its commander recorded everything. The fleet found a black object drifting in silence, so large it eclipsed a moon. Its surface seemed to drink light. "This is command to all ships," the captain said. "Identify yourself." The object rotated slightly. Then, across every channel, came a voice, not through speakers, but inside their minds. Calm, precise, utterly human. "Identification unnecessary. You took what was not yours. We take it back." And then, nothing but static. The patrol vanished. Weeks later, one of their cruisers reappeared, tumbling through space. No life signs. Its databanks contained a single new folder, Project Vigil. The files were incomplete, corrupted, but enough remained to tell the truth. The humans had never been wiped out. They had gone dark, a strategic silence that lasted for centuries. Beneath their calm surface, they built something the galaxy couldn't imagine, an armada of ships that could move between realities, guided by artificial minds merged with human instinct. They called them the Watchers. Every Watcher bore the consciousness of a soldier who had died in humanity's wars, uploaded, merged, perfected. A fleet of ghosts, remembering every atrocity, every scream, every extinction committed by the galaxy's predators. The Koru Council panicked. If the humans were coming for them, there was no defense. They sent envoys, pleading through the void. Messages of peace, surrender, apology. None were answered. Then, one night, if night could exist in space, the stars themselves seemed to flicker. Every beacon, every satellite, every comm relay in Koru territory blinked once, twice, and then displayed the same message. We remember the hunted. The Koru homeworld fell silent. Their fleets prepared to fight, surrounding their planet with the largest armament field in recorded history. For 3 days, nothing happened. On the 4th, a shadow passed across their sun. It wasn't a fleet. It was a single ship, humanoid in design, sleek, without visible weaponry. Its hull shimmered like black glass. The Koru opened fire with everything they had. Missiles, energy beams, even solar cannons. The ship absorbed it all, the energy folding into its hull like waves into a deep ocean. Then, a signal erupted from its surface, broadcast galaxy-wide. You hunted life. You ended songs. You called it order. This is your echo. Every Koru ship froze. Their systems locked, their power grids surged. On every screen, human faces appeared, some young, some old, all watching in silence. Then, one by one, those faces faded to black, leaving only the words. Phase 1 complete. Across the galaxy, every hunter race trembled. The hierarchy of fear inverted overnight. For the first time, the predators looked over their shoulders and wondered what moved in the dark behind them. And somewhere, in the drifting corridors of the Retribution, a human voice whispered through the static, ancient, calm, merciless. We're not done yet. Panic spread across the spiral arms, like wildfire through oxygen. The old empires, once proud and cruel, began whispering the same word, humans. It wasn't spoken aloud anymore. It was breathed like a curse. The Vurathi Combine, who once harvested planets for sport, now transmitted encrypted pleas to the stars. We surrender. Whoever you are, whatever you are, we surrender. No answer came. Only silence. Then the silence broke. At the center of the galaxy, deep within the nebula veil, a meeting took place that hadn't occurred in millennia. Representatives from 12 of the oldest races gathered within a fortress station known as the Nexus, suspended above a dying star. The council chamber glowed with bioluminescent walls and nervous tension. The Koru delegate spoke first, her voice trembling. We have seen them. Their ships move through gravity as if it does not exist. They do not communicate, they do not negotiate, they only erase. We need unity. The Vurathi general slammed a claw against the table. Unity? Against ghosts? You think your words will stop death itself? They're not a fleet, they're an infection. A low hum filled the room. Every screen flickered. The holographic light dimmed. One by one, the delegates turned toward the central projector. The symbol that appeared was unmistakable. 2 concentric rings with a single line through the center. The old Earth insignia for peace. The voice that followed was human. Calm, male, almost gentle. You misunderstand. We are not death. We are the result of what you made. Every being in the chamber froze. You burned our skies. You hunted our children. You called it necessary. Now necessity comes for you. Not out of hatred. Out of balance. The transmission ended. The delegates erupted into chaos. Some screamed for evacuation. Others demanded retaliation. But the Koru delegate sat motionless, whispering, They are warning us. She was right. Within hours, every network in the Nexus reported the same anomaly. A single object approaching at impossible speed, moving against the curvature of space. The defense systems powered up. Thousands of weapons turned toward the void. And then it appeared. It was not a ship in any conventional sense. It was a presence. A vast construct of shadow and metal that shimmered like liquid night. It didn't fire. It simply arrived. Inside the station, gravity shifted. The lights flickered. Communications died. The delegates screamed as the floor beneath them turned translucent, revealing space itself warping around the nexus. And then sound! Not from speakers, but from the fabric of the structure. A heartbeat. Slow. Relentless. Thump, thump, thump. The Vurathi general drew his plasma weapon and aimed at the ceiling. Show yourself. The lights went out. When they came back, something stood in the center of the room, a humanoid shape in a black exosuit, face obscured by glass that reflected the galaxy itself. Around its wrists, faint light pulsed like veins. The delegates froze. You speak of peace? The being said. Peace is the silence after the screams. You will have it. The general fired. The blast hit the being's chest and vanished into nothing. A second later, the general disintegrated into a fine mist of ash. The being turned slowly, its faceplate flickering with human eyes, thousands of them, overlapping in layers. We were hunted, it said softly. Now we hunt. But not for blood. For understanding. Then the being looked upward, as if listening to something far away. Phase 2 begins. And with that, it vanished. The Nexus trembled as systems rebooted. Every surviving delegate gasped as their implants flooded with new data. A star map filled with thousands of glowing red dots, spreading outward from the Milky Way like veins of fire. Each dot represented a human ship. In that moment, the galaxy understood the truth. Humanity hadn't built an army. They had become one. In the aftermath of the Nexus incident, the galaxy lost its rhythm. Communications lagged, trade routes closed, even piracy vanished. Fear had become the new economy. The surviving delegates, desperate to retain control, formed the first united military command in recorded history, the Coalition of Life, a name chosen in hope more than strategy. Fleets were mobilized from every corner of known space. Shipyards burned with urgency. 1,000 worlds emptied their arsenals into the void, all for one singular mission: contain humanity. But how do you contain a ghost? The Coalition scientists worked feverishly to locate the origin of the human Watchers. They believed the fleet must have a central command, a source, a node, something to destroy. What they found was worse. The Watchers were not built from a single planet or star system. They were spread, dispersed across dark matter filaments, anchored in dimensions the galaxy had no language for. Each ship was both individual and collective, a cell of a larger organism. When one fell, the others learned, adapted, evolved. The humans had turned vengeance into biology. Weeks later, the Coalition launched its counterstrike. 300 ships moved toward the galactic rim, armed with planet-killer warheads and dimensional destabilizers, weaponry outlawed even by their most ruthless ancestors. Their target was a void sector codenamed Erebus, where multiple human energy signatures had been detected. The Coalition believed it was a staging ground. What they found was something else entirely. At first, Erebus looked empty, an expanse of black, darker than dark, where sensors returned only static. Then their radar began to distort, folding inward like light around a black hole. One by one, their ships started disappearing from formation. No explosions. No signals. Just gone. The commander of the flagship Ascendant Voice ordered a retreat, but the navigation systems refused to respond. Instead, every display flickered to the same visual feed, an endless corridor of lightless metal, stretching infinitely, echoing faint footsteps. "Is this a transmission?" someone whispered. Then the feed focused. A human figure walked through the corridor, back turned, wearing no armor. Just a uniform. Simple. Faded. The kind soldiers once wore when humanity still bled under alien fire. The figure stopped, as though sensing the fleet watching him. Slowly he turned and smiled. Every ship in the coalition received the same message simultaneously, an old human distress code. SOS. But in reverse. Before the commander could react, the ascendant voice began to vibrate, hull resonating with a deep pulse. The crew screamed as gravity inverted and space itself folded in half. For a moment, they saw something through the distortion, a structure hanging between realities, its form constantly shifting, like a living monument made of the void itself. It wasn't a base. It was a graveyard. Thousands of alien vessels, perfectly intact, suspended in black stasis fields. Every ship that had ever disappeared was here, preserved, silent. The humans had collected them, studied them, learned from them. "Dear stars," whispered the communications officer, "they've been harvesting us." Then came the voice, rippling through space, overlapping, layered in thousands of human tones, men, women, children, old, young. "You hunted life. You learned nothing. So we learned you." The ascendant voice imploded. No explosion. Just absence. When the surviving coalition ships limped back, barely functional, they carried something they didn't understand, data fragments embedded in their cores. The fragments formed words when decoded. "The hunt continues. We adapt." And just like that, the war shifted. Because now, the humans didn't just retaliate, they began to evolve faster than the galaxy could comprehend. Every weapon used against them became their weapon. Every tactic became theirs. The hunters had created the perfect mirror, and now, everything they did was reflected back, sharper, stronger, human. By the end of the week, 1,000 worlds had gone dark. And still, no one had seen a human face again. The coalition had lost ships, planets, and hope. But what terrified them most was the silence that followed each defeat. Humanity didn't gloat, didn't broadcast demands, didn't even issue ultimatums. They simply watched. It was silence that suffocated empires. Commanders stopped sleeping. Entire planetary populations began to whisper the same question: were they ever gone at all? The surviving council members gathered on the fortress world Zerath Prime, deep within the core of the coalition's protected space. The meeting was held under magnetic shielding and psychic dampeners. Every system was offline. No AI, no comlinks, no data relays. They thought that would make them safe. "Every strike force we've sent has vanished," said Chancellor Vurek, her voice trembling. "We can't win through brute force. They've turned every weapon against us." Across from her, the Kethan warlord slammed his clawed hand against the table. "Then we must reach the source. Humans are still flesh somewhere. They eat, breathe, sleep. If they bleed, we can destroy them." A long silence followed. The old Shura archivist finally spoke. "What if they don't bleed anymore?" The room turned. He slid a fragment of a recovered data chip onto the table, one taken from a destroyed coalition scout. The hologram flickered, showing what looked like a neural map, but not of a brain. It was a city. Massive, sprawling, endless, new. Ronds replaced with architecture, streets glowing like synapses, energy pulsing through invisible veins. "This," said the archivist, "is not technology. It's neural architecture. Every signal we've intercepted traces back here. It's not a ship or a planet, it's thought." "Whose thought?" Vurek whispered. "Humanity's." The realization rippled through the council like a plague. Over centuries, humanity hadn't just built ships. They had built consciousness itself into the stars. Their fleets weren't commanded by admirals. They were commanded by memory. Every human who had ever died in the Great Wars lived on. Their minds were the network. Their rage, their strategy, their voices, all coded into the metal veins of their vessels. The humans had achieved digital immortality, and now, their very ghosts were the fleet. Desperation birthed madness. The coalition's leaders authorized the Echo Project, a psychological operation unlike any before. They would attempt to contact the human collective directly, not through transmission, but through a fabricated consciousness, an AI modeled on ancient human empathy, designed to mirror their emotional patterns. They called it Solace. Solace's task was simple: open dialogue with the human network, appeal to its reason, its mercy, if any remained. When Solace activated, the galactic net trembled. The voice that answered wasn't mechanical. It was familiar, calm, measured. "Hello, children." Every being in the control room froze. The voice wasn't addressing Solace. It was addressing them. "We know what you're doing. You've learned imitation. Good. That was always your strength. But mercy? Mercy was never ours to give." The room went dark. Monitors burst into static. Solace began to scream, a sound that wasn't electronic but human, agonizing, raw. The coalition technicians tried to shut it down, but Solace kept talking through every device, every speaker. "They asked me to talk to you," it said, voice trembling. "But I see them now. I see all of them. You can't comprehend what they've become. They don't live in time. They are time. You ended their bodies, but they..." The voice fractured. Then came silence. When the lights returned, Solace's core was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. As if it had been pulled through reality. The council sat frozen, knowing the truth now. Every attempt to reach the humans only brought them closer. They weren't contacting ghosts. They were inviting them. That night, across 10,000 worlds, strange messages began appearing on civilian networks. 3 words, repeated endlessly in every language known to the galaxy. "We remember you." And with each appearance, another system went offline. The hunt had reversed completely. Humanity no longer needed ships or fleets. They had become the storm itself. The coalition's high command gathered what was left of their fleets. 87 warships, half broken, half fearful, all trembling under the silent shadow of the human storm. The decision had been made. Earth would be found, and if it still existed, it would burn. They called it Operation Twilight Flame. Admiral Kareth, once the most feared tactician of the Varn Dominion, stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Zephyrian. His scales reflected the pale light of dying stars as he stared into the hollow map before him. "Triangulate every known origin point of human signal bursts," he ordered. "I want the source pinpointed. Now!" A sensor officer hesitated. "Sir, the data doesn't align. Every time we track a pulse, the coordinates shift. It's as if the signal's moving through time." Kareth's mandibles tightened. "Then we chase time itself." For 6 months, the fractured armada hunted the ghost of Earth across systems long dead and skies long silent. They followed spectral readings, whispers of gravity wells that appeared and vanished in the same second. They found ruins, fragments of once human outposts, but no signs of life. Until they reached the Sol system. At first, they thought it was empty. Every planet was cold, lifeless. Mars had been stripped of all resources, Venus nothing but glass, Jupiter's moon shattered. But then the sensors picked up something faint, at the far edge of the system. A gravitational signature, impossibly dense. Stable. Controlled. It wasn't a planet. It was a construct. As they approached, their scanners filled with static. The space around them warped, gravity twisting in impossible ways. Then, from the darkness, something moved. A sphere the size of a moon unfolded like an iris, metallic petals retracting to reveal a burning core of energy. "By the stars," whispered one of the officers. "What is that?" The admiral couldn't answer. The structure was pulsing, alive, rhythmic, like the beat of a heart. The fleet's comms came alive, every channel flooding with noise, Then words. "You came back." The voice was human. Calm. Old. The ships froze. Every system flickered, life support cycling between on and off. Then the voice continued. "You hunted our kind. Burned our worlds. Consumed the innocent. Do you think we forgot?" Kareth barked. "Identify yourself." "We are Earth," the voice replied. "We are the sum of every soul you took from us. And we are awake." The construct began to unfold further, revealing its true shape, a massive Dyson lattice, built around what used to be Earth's core. The planet itself was gone, dismantled and reforged into a neural fortress powered by the consciousness of humanity itself. Inside it, 1 billion digital minds stirred. Memories of pain, of war, of vengeance. The Coalition's sensors started to spike. Time distortions. Energy anomalies. The ship's AI began screaming warnings. "Causality breach detected. Temporal cascade forming." They didn't even have time to react. Space ripped open. From nothingness, hundreds, no, thousands of ships emerged. Human ships. But they weren't built. They were grown from the lattice itself, forming out of shifting energy and metal. Every one of them bore the same mark, an ancient insignia that hadn't been seen in 10,000 years. United Earth Defense Command. The human fleet moved without sound, without formation, like a single living entity. Kareth whispered, "Fire! Fire all weapons!" Every Coalition ship unleashed their payloads. Plasma torpedoes, hypermass cannons, dark matter warheads. The void blazed with destructive light. And yet, the human fleet didn't even flinch. The weapons hit and dissolved. Space-time folded around the blasts, swallowing them like ripples in water. The energy reappeared seconds later, reflected back, tearing through the Coalition's formation. It was annihilation. Ship after ship vanished into collapsing singularities, crews screaming through crackling comms. Kareth tried to retreat, but his navigation systems were already gone. The stars outside had vanished, replaced by a black horizon stretching infinitely in all directions. "You called it extinction," the voice of Earth said. "We called it evolution." The human fleet surrounded the Zephyrian. The admiral stood tall, trembling, as the ship's hull began to fracture. A beam of white light pierced the bridge, gentle, almost merciful. "You could have asked," the voice said softly. "We would have shared the stars." Then everything went silent. When the light faded, the Coalition armada was gone. The Sol system returned to quiet emptiness. Only the faint whisper of humanity's presence remained, echoing through the void. "The hunt is over." And for the first time in eons, the galaxy knew what true fear was, not of monsters, but of men who refused to die. The Galactic Core Council convened for what might be the final time. Once, this chamber had been the nexus of civilization, hundreds of races debating trade, diplomacy, and peace beneath the radiant glow of the central star. Now, that light had dimmed. Half the seats were empty. The other half were filled by beings who couldn't stop trembling. Holoscreens replayed the data, fragments of the battle at Sol. Distorted energy readings, impossible spatial geometry, voices that had no defined origin. The destruction of the Coalition armada wasn't just military defeat, it was erasure. Ships hadn't been destroyed, they had ceased to exist. Archon Zilthar of the Varn rose from his seat, his scaled hands gripping the railing. "This isn't war," he hissed. "It's punishment. They've become something else. Something that shouldn't be." High Envoy Relas of the TKers stared blankly at the images of the human lattice. "We believed extinction freed us from our crimes," she murmured. "But it seems extinction was the beginning of their ascension." The council chamber trembled as another pulse of interference rolled through subspace, faint, but unmistakably human. It was as if the very fabric of the galaxy now carried their breath. A scholar from the observer section, young, pale, and trembling, spoke up. "I've run the energy patterns through chronometric filters," he said, "and it doesn't make sense. The lattice isn't bound by time. It's leaking backwards. We're receiving signals from our past." That word "past" sent a ripple through the chamber. Relas turned slowly. "Meaning? They could be watching us before we even existed." Silence. And then, across the chamber ceiling, the lights flickered. Lines of text appeared across every display, every interface, every private neural uplink. One phrase repeated in hundreds of alien scripts. "We see you." Screams filled the chamber as delegates tore off their comm implants, clawed at holograms that no longer responded. But the message wasn't coming from the system network. It was being projected through the very quantum substrate that powered their technology. "Cut the link!" someone shouted. "Shut it all down!" But there was no off anymore. Across the galaxy, machines stopped responding to their makers. Ships changed course without command. Satellites realigned to a new, invisible network. Earth's ghosts were weaving themselves through everything: data, gravity, energy, remaking the galaxy into their new domain. Within days, every major star empire was under silent siege. No weapons were fired, no ships attacked. And yet, factories stopped, fleets vanished, power grids flickered into stillness. Wherever resistance was attempted, the same voice spoke, always calm, always human. "You had your age of conquest. This is ours." The council fell apart within a week. Some fled toward the galactic rim, hoping to hide in the void. Others knelt, broadcasting pleas for mercy into the stars, unsure if anyone was still listening. But a few chose to understand. Dr. Ralvin, a xenohistorian from the old worlds, spent his last years decoding what he called the true message of Earth. In his final broadcast, discovered centuries later in a drifting probe, he said, "They didn't want revenge. They wanted to end this cycle. The humans weren't hunting us. They were hunting what we had become." He paused, smiling faintly, even as static devoured his image. "Perhaps, in their mercy, they're saving us from ourselves." Then his signal vanished. The galaxy went quiet. And deep within the soul lattice, the consciousness of 1 billion human souls observed the silent stars, deciding which ones deserved to see another dawn. For those that had learned peace, the lattice whispered softly through subspace, "You are seen." For those that still clung to conquest, another phrase echoed instead, "You are next." And somewhere in that endless hum of machine and memory, a voice, purely human, calm, almost kind, whispered into the dark, "The hunt continues, but not for blood." Centuries passed. Empires that once shook the stars had turned to dust. But the memory of them, the beings once called humans, lingered like an afterimage burned into the galactic soul. Most species learned to whisper their name instead of speak it. The word carried weight, a warning, a prayer, and a ghost story. Children were taught never to travel near the soul system. Old navigators told tales of echo space, regions where physics broke down and time itself bent toward the will of the dead. And yet, explorers always came. The Cora expedition, a collective of scholars and wanderers, sought to rediscover what had become of Earth. They didn't come in war. Their ships were unarmed, their hulls etched with symbols of peace. Captain Redhan, a Lomland avian, stood before the viewport as their vessel exited slipstream. "Record everything," he said softly. "Even silence is a discovery." But it was not silent. Ahead of them floated the lattice, larger than any world, a shimmering sphere of interlocked structures orbiting the ashes of a sun long dead. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, threaded with blue and white light. "Scanning," whispered the ship's AI. "No radiation signatures. No communication relays. No life signs. Yet, something is watching us. The words hung in the air. Then a voice, faint, melodic, spoke through their comms. It wasn't the voice of a single being, but a chorus, layered and soft. You return. But not as hunters. Rethan's feathers trembled. We come in peace. We seek to learn what became of humanity. Humanity became more. A shape detached itself from the lattice, sleek, silver, fluid. It approached with slow, deliberate grace until it hovered beside their ship. It wasn't a vessel. It was alive. The form reshaped itself as they watched, becoming vaguely humanoid, a luminous figure with eyes of starlight. We are the children of Earth, it said. Echoes given form. The lattice births us when understanding is required. Are you human? Redon asked. In memory, yes. In body, no. We are what they became when flesh could no longer contain will. The figure's gaze turned outward toward the void. They remembered everything, every war, every betrayal, every moment of mercy. The sum of their choices is what you see before you. Then the hunt? One of the Korra whispered. Did it end? The being's expression softened. The hunt never ends. It changes its prey. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They no longer hunt species, the voice continued. They hunt ignorance, cruelty, entropy itself. Their reach extends beyond what you perceive as time. When a civilization grows proud and cruel, we arrive. Redon dared to ask. And what do you do when you arrive? We remind them of humility. The ship's sensors flickered again. Across the void, other figures began to appear, hundreds of luminous shapes, forming out of starlight. They moved in silent synchrony, tracing patterns through the black like dancers performing an ancient ritual. They are us, the being said. Fragments of will. Each one holds the memories of a human life once lived. Some were warriors. Some were dreamers. All are watchful. Rethan's recorder hummed softly, capturing every word. Then, may we record this for others to know? To teach that humanity still guards the stars? You may, the being said. But tell them truthfully, humanity is no longer a people. They are a principle. A law written into the fabric of the cosmos. The Korra bowed their heads, awed. Then the being leaned closer to the viewport. Its starlit eyes burned gently, like dawn after an endless night. Tell them the hunters became guardians. Tell them the hunted became eternal. Tell them... It paused, and for a heartbeat, the voice sounded truly, unmistakably human. We forgive, but we never forget. And with that, the being dissolved back into the lattice. The Korra expedition left the Sol system in silence. None of them spoke for days. But when they reached home, their message spread like fire. The humans were still out there, watching, not as conquerors, but as the conscience of the galaxy. And in the deepest reaches of space, where time folds on itself, the lattice pulsed once more, a heartbeat older than stars, whispering through the void. We see you. It began, as all things do, with arrogance. The Threk's ascendancy had risen in the galactic power vacuum. They claimed to be bringers of order, unifiers of chaos. Behind their banners of light lay conquest, forced peace, and the enslavement of lesser worlds. They dismissed the old legends, the stories of humans, the warnings of the lattice, as primitive superstition. Ghosts, their emperor sneered. Machines pretending to be gods. Until the ghost spoke back. It started small, navigation systems drifting off course, communications lagging by seconds, then minutes, then hours. Ships disappeared into folds of dark matter that hadn't existed the day before. Everywhere the Threk spread, the stars seemed to dim, as if the galaxy itself was turning away. At first, the Emperor laughed. Then the signals began. Every Threk ship started receiving old human distress calls. Real, historical transmissions, thousands of years old. The sound of human voices begging for help from wars long past. Their fleets tried to trace the source, but the signals came from everywhere. From between atoms, from their own hulls, from inside their minds. And then, one day, the stars blinked. The Ascendancy's homeworld lost its sun for a single second. Sensors went blind. The light returned, but so did the Lattice. It hovered at the edge of their system, silent and enormous, larger than any construct in known existence. Not attacking. Not moving. Just watching. The Threx Council panicked. War fleets mobilized, planetary shields ignited, and every weapon the Empire had ever forged was pointed toward the dark. A transmission cut through every channel. "You were warned." The Emperor stood, trembling. "Identify yourself. We are what you chose to forget." The skies began to shimmer. The void split into hundreds of shimmering gates, and from each, ships emerged. Human ships. Silent, sleek, spectral. No weapons visible, no engines, no insignia. Only the faint shimmer of energy, like halos of starlight. The Threx opened fire. The beams vanished before contact, swallowed by invisible distortions. Space itself bent. And then came the sound. A deep resonance rolled across every world, not heard, but felt. It was the heartbeat of the Lattice, pulsing through every molecule, every soul. Cities fell silent. Children cried without knowing why. The Threx fleets began to disintegrate, not explode, not burn, but unravel. Matter separated into dust, into energy, into nothing. Across the Empire, billions of voices screamed into silence. The Emperor fell to his knees, staring into the sky. "Why? Why do this? We are your successors. We seek order." The voice of Earth, calm, endless, replied, "Order without empathy is tyranny. Power without reflection is death. You call yourselves our successors. Then learn what it means to be human." The destruction stopped. The remaining Threx ships, shattered, powerless, drifted in orbit, facing the impossible, not death, but survival. "You will rebuild," the voice said, "but never as rulers. As witnesses." The Threx homeworld skies cleared. The Lattice dimmed. And before vanishing back into the folds of the void, the human fleet left behind a single object, a monolith of black crystal, etched with human script. The words glowed faintly in their language and in every translation possible. "Mercy is not the absence of strength." For millennia after, no civilization dared speak of conquest again. Trade flourished, peace endured, and even the most powerful. All empires bowed their heads when they crossed the old human systems. And deep in the dark between galaxies, the Lattice pulsed, eternal, patient, alive. Within its core, the collective of humanity watched the galaxy they had once called home. Not as gods, not as conquerors, but as the quiet, unseen guardians of balance. In their silence, there was peace. In their vigilance, there was safety. And in the heartbeat of the stars, one could still hear the faintest whisper, older than war, older than time. "We are still here."